Testing, testing. Everything should be good. We should be live. We should be on. Hello, everybody. I'm Boss Joe Boss. Oh. Microphone stand going down too low. Okay. We got some pretty fat news here. Some pretty big news. Especially when it comes to new information on the Strait of Hormuz, all that jazz. It's just been one busy day after the next. It's been one huge bit of news after the next, man. It is. Oh, man. Outrunning, I'll join you in about 30 minutes. All right, nice to see you, Kari. Nice to see you. And, oh, man, has it been like day after day after day of going through all the news. And man, it'll be nice when things settle down, but it's always when things are picking up here the most that you just can't keep up with all the information sometimes. Just everyone is giving their opinion, everyone is giving their analysis, and a lot of it actually has pretty unique perspectives. Some people are saying the same thing in slightly different ways. But when people in power are saying stuff, you have to be aware of what it is exactly they're saying. You just have to. You can't. I'm setting up a chart or two here. Okay. And I believe I got everything right. So let's go to the charts. Okay. I'm gonna have, let's put everything over here for now on that side because we want to actually look at this first. Trump says U.S. to provide insurance escorts for oil tankers through the Gulf. Now, who would like to take a wild guess on how we should update our trading expectations based on this headline? Who would like to take a wild guess on how this impacted oil market? So, I don't know. So this came out a few hours ago, and we've just been going down, 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 and had a bit of a bump higher here, but every single time when there is these massive geopolitical events, you have to stay on top of the squawk. You have to stay on top of the news. Because if you don't, and then this thing becomes 4 or 5 hours old, these charts will move so significantly, so quickly. I mean, this... Oh my god, that was like close to 7%. That's close to a 7% move from the high to the low, roughly here. And it's probably going to bounce again, and then it's going to dump again as soon as tankers actually get their hands on the insurance and start going in. Man, oh man. And then there's, of course, more posts in the thread on all the Islamic Republic. So let's continue here. Oil pairs gain after Trump offers tanker escorts, stocks off lows. Dubai markets to reopen March 4th with 5% limit down threshold. Iraq to shut oil output as storage fills. Trump calls latest hit on Iranian dictatorship substantial. Drones hit U.S. embassy in Saudi Arabia. Israel sends soldiers to Lebanon. So that's what's going on there. Now we're going to kick this off with getting some more information on Trump paying for maritime war insurance. And this is the first bit that we're getting. Actually, no, this has to do with MERS and Ukraine. So that was the wrong link. And what about this one? Yeah, there we go.
I'm going to bring you a bit of breaking news. We're talking about the economic effect of this conflict. And we've just had this post from Donald Trump. He says, effective immediately, I've ordered the United States Development Finance Corporation to provide, at a very reasonable price, political risk insurance and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy, traveling through the Gulf. This will be available to all shipping lines. If necessary, the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow of energy to the world. The United States' economic and military might is the greatest on earth. More actions to come. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Sam, can we get your reaction to that positive news potentially for the Strait of Hormuz?
It's fascinating. Look, in the first 48 hours after the bombing raid, what you saw is that strip of water between the...
Okay. What you saw was oil go fucking haywire. That's what you saw. Oil go frickin' haywire. Now this helps China a lot. China pressures Iran to keep Strait of Hormuz open to oil and gas flows. China depends on Middle East oil and LNG for a large part of its energy imports, but Iran is heavily dependent on Chinese refiners to buy its sanctioned oil too. With over 80% going to China, all these supplies have to transit the Strait of Hormuz on their way to China from ports in the Gulf. And then we have another one here. In 2025, and I'll make this bigger so it's a little easier to read. In 2025, China officially imported 13.5% of their crude oil from Iran. As seen in the chart here, a large number of China's oil come from other countries, such much of which is Iranian crude circumvented through third-party nations like Malaysia and Indonesia. And yeah, you can see Iran is right there, just behind Saudi Arabia as far as crude oil imported into China. And then I believe we got one more here. Oh. There we go. China's reliance on imported oil. China's heavy reliance on imported oil, over 70% of consumption, especially seaborne imports. Over 90% of total imports have made oil stockpiling a cornerstone of China's approach to oil security. Yeah. So this is going to be great for China. We actually should check out, because we saw how the yuan reacted on the very first day as there were strikes on Iran. So if we go to CHN USD or USD CNH, yeah, there we go. Doesn't look like it's really helped China's yuan all that much, but there has been a reversal over the last few hours when the announcement was made. So this should help the yuan appreciate going forward, especially if by the end of this week, more and more and more tankers and shippers are able to actually get that help from the United States in in a material way. Let's see. Now we're going to go into some U.S. political updates real quick.
Authorize any military action against Iran beyond the 60-day or 90-day window.
So this is talking about the War Powers Act. Will Congress try and pass the War Powers Act to rein in Trump? And Thune, Senate leader, is saying no.
No. I think the president has the authority that he needs to conduct the activities, the operations that are currently underway there. As you know, there's a lot of controversy around, questions around the War Powers Act, but I think the President is acting in the best interest of the nation and our national security interests by ensuring that he's protecting Americans and American bases and installations in that region, as well as those of our allies.
Okay. And then the next one here, Mike Johnson is just pointing out, hey, the Democrats don't want to fund the Department of Homeland Security, even though there could be issues with some domestic terrorism from having the wide open border, some Iranian, some Islamic cells, some Islamic Republic cells get into the United States via the open border policy that's been in place for a while. And DHS, they're saying, the Republicans are saying DHS should be funded again to watch for that risk. And if we go here, hello, I am doing very well, thank you for asking. And then there's like actually a couple of things here. Wow, this is a whole 4-minute clip of just someone going after some hypocrisy. Let's keep this going. Let's not make this too boring. Oh, this was interesting. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he's about to unleash Chiang on Iran. Now, if you don't know who Chiang is Chiang Kai-shek, or the tennis player, depending on who you're talking about. But it's a kind of a Cold War slogan, where Chiang Kai-shek was the head of the nationalists in China before the communists came in, and Unleash Chiang was supposedly a kind of slogan to say, hey, we should be going back into China and help out Chiang Kai-shek. I actually mentioned this, I think, in yesterday's stream, this exact thing, and yeah, the United States never ended up going in. But...
on these people in the next few hours.
Oh yeah.
You know, you're about to see. You know, we're going to unleash Chang on these people in the next few hours and days. You're going to really begin to perceive a change in the scope and in the intensity of these attacks, as frankly, the two most powerful air forces in the world take apart this terroristic regime and defang it and take away its ability to threaten its neighbors or hide behind a zone of immunity that allows them to develop their nuclear ambitions. This terroristic, radical, cleric-led regime cannot be ever allowed to have nuclear weapons. We saw what they were willing to do to their own people. They were willing to slaughter their own people in the streets. Imagine what they would do to us. Imagine what they would do to others. You know.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all I have for the political updates. But in this presser, Rubio said some stuff about Iranian missiles. And I actually do have a bit of stuff to cover on updates on Iranian missile capabilities at the moment that I found quite interesting. And look, I get it. Not everyone really wants to be looking at all this stuff. They want to look at the fucking pretty charts. They want to see the green and red blinking lights go up and down. But what makes the red and green blinking lights go up and down? It's some of this boring shit, right? So you got to pay attention. You got to work with me here and follow through with me on this stuff. Otherwise, it's going to be a way, way, way harder ordeal to actually understand everything that's going on here. Let's actually go back to crude. Like, this was a 6%, 7% drop in oil on the announcement of what Trump said just a few hours ago. It's a huge deal. Or, even maybe you're too new to this and you forgot everything that's happened with the tariffs. You forgot the entire... The crazy, crazy, crazy volatility and the horridness. How many huge professional traders lost a lot of money trading in the first half of 2025 when Trump was using the IEEPA tariffs to tariff this person, tariff that person, and tariff this person, and tariff that person. You get a tariff. You get a tariff. Look under your seat. There's a tariff. Everybody gets tariffs, right? It was insane. If you did not have a Squawk chat open, if you didn't have something like this news feed that's above me, where you can go through all the latest developments that are currently happening in the world right now and get that news as quickly as you possibly can, because you're a retail trader, you're not a robot, right? To update and change your expectations on how assets should move, because not every single indicator, like I said, is going to be able to help you predict how geopolitical events are going to change the price of shit. It's very, very important to stay on top of what actually changes expectations, what actually can change moves. Now, when things are behaving nominally, economically, that's when you can have more nominal expectations, and a lot of indicators work in those situations. But when things are very heavily geopolitically driven, you have to know what the fuck is going on and what is the next geopolitical development, so you know how to react and protect yourself or get exposure because you see some kind of opportunity, right? So that is just me hammering it in. Let's continue down getting updates, right? So Iran threatens hours later, and then the facility gets destroyed hours later after the threat. This morning, Iranian state TV aired a propaganda video showcasing what is claimed was an underground missile storage facility, a direct warning to the US and Israel. Now reports indicate that same facility has been struck and destroyed in coordinated US-Israeli airstrikes. From televised threat to smoking crater, it confirmed this marks a rapid intelligence to target cycle and a clear message. Exposed assets are vulnerable assets. The tempo of this war is accelerating. Stand by. So you can see missiles getting pulled out, stuff getting blown up. I genuinely don't know, though, however, if this is actually real propaganda or not, and these are actual airstrikes on these assets and propaganda or not. There was a post earlier today by one of the guys in charge of running content strategy on X saying there's been so much false information, there's been so much AI crap, there's been so many people posting news and claims with images of shit that's been years and years and years old. Like, they'll post some new news, but then the video attached to that news is some video from like 4 years ago. Well, the new policy on X is if you're sharing AI misinformation, if you're sharing really old reports, that essentially if you're doing any kind of misinformation, especially on wars for breaking news, your account's going to get suspended, and if you're monetized, your account's going to get demonetized for like 90 days. Now, I don't know about suspend, but it's essentially the threat will keep escalating on people's accounts if they share misinformation. So the bar is now much higher for the standard and quality of posts if you want to keep your fucking account on X. All right. There's another thing here, though. We are already seeing a clear day-to-day decline in launches by the Islamic Republic, signaling rapid degradation of its strike capability. Ballistic missile launches by the Islamic Republic over the last 4 days. Day 1 was 350 missiles. Day 2 was 175 missiles. Day 3 was 120 missiles. Day 4 was 50 missiles. The identification and targeting of their launchers and supporting infrastructure have significantly degraded and constrained their operational capability. Man, this is great news. This is exactly the development we want to see to actually get a rebound in the markets that's tradable, and for Iran to get the transitory government up and running and moving forward. All right. And here's the next little bit here of information we got. This is what Secretary Marco Rubio was talking about, was the Iranian missile stockpile versus U.S. interceptor capacity. So Iranian missile stockpile is the red line, and U.S. interceptors are here in the blue line. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. So thankfully, they're not launching all those missiles. They've launched a few hundred missiles. Yeah, and again, thank you guys for saying hello. I so appreciate seeing you guys every single day, and seeing new people show up is going to be great. Seeing new people show up in the chat and saying hi and participating, giving their thoughts on stuff, man, it's really going to be great getting an actual bit of, you could say, commentary from the chat, because then I can kind of riff off it, because all this stuff is developing in real time. And Lord knows, new information comes down Squawk all the time, so as soon as something comes down and then someone says it in the chat, I can pull it up on the stream, looking at it. These are going to be good streams. These are going to be good streams. As of this writing, says Becky Anderson, the UAE has intercepted nearly 1,000 Iranian missiles, which actually contradicts, 1,000 Iranian missiles and drones. So maybe that last post wasn't necessarily telling the truth, because apparently Iran has thrown up less than 1,000 missiles. But here the UAE is saying they intercepted nearly 1,000 missiles, and insists that it got ammunition to keep going for a long time to do missile interception. In a representation, a spokesperson, Al-Humaidi, Major General Al-Humaidi, gave me a close-up look at some of the Iranian hardware that has been shut down. And this is a 4-minute clip. We're not going to go over it. We're going to try and speed through these. And I believe this is the same clip, right? Yep, that's the same clip. So now we're going to move into the next bit, which is actually quite concerning. IRGC is having meetings in schools. So get this. Here's a screenshot. Even if schools reopen in Iran, don't send your kids to school. The regime in Iran is using children's schools as bases for their Basiji jihad thugs. Nowhere is safe, even for school kids. Which, I mean, it's not totally surprising, because it turns out that the school, the girls' school that was blown up by the missile that went up and straight down, was right next to, like, literally not even a block away, next door to the girls' school. There was the Iranian base with the missile launchers, and not even a block away, we're talking maybe 1 or 2 houses away, is the children's school for girls. You don't put your military bases or your schools next to your military bases unless you intend to have collateral damage for propaganda purposes. And the Iranians are known to do that. So this is kind of fucking insane. And this is completely in line with the strategy and the tactics of the people who the Iranians have been funding. Hezbollah in those types. Although Hezbollah is now has been hit quite hard as well. We have a couple more bits on this point here. Images are circulating of IRGC personnel holding meetings and press conferences inside Iranian schools. Iran International confirmed security forces stationed in schools in Tehran and Shiraz. The pattern is documented and is not new. It mirrors the playbook used by Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Embedded military operations inside civilian infrastructure to complicate targeting and generate propaganda when strikes land nearby. Nailed it. But before anyone treats this as a clean narrative, absorb the cost. A strike on, let's say, the school in Minab, adjacent to the IRGC naval barracks, killed up to 160. So that was the girls' school. CNN reports that at least 108 of them were students at a girls' school. Children, a separate strike hit a Tehran high school on March 2nd, killing at least 2 more children. The regime did not suspend classes despite knowing the war was imminent. The IRGC positioned forces in or adjacent to schools rather than evacuating students. This is the human shield doctrine operating at national scale, and the cost is measured in dead children whose government chose to use them as deterrents. Now, connect this to the mechanism. That seems like an AI through thing. Human shield strategy, da-da-da-da-da. I think this guy uses a bit of AI to write his stuff. But here are the pictures. It does look kind of silly with the rainbows. Oh, and that's another screenshot of the courtyard we were just looking at earlier. It seriously looks like a video game or something. Like, it's like uncanny to me to see this like as a legitimate strategy. But in war, a lot of people will go really far away. And then this is an actual video of the conference, and it's translated. Iran warns European countries against joining war. Iran warns European countries against joining its conflict with Israel and the United States after Germany, Britain, France, and said they would take defensive action, quote unquote, to destroy Iran's missile launching capabilities. It comes 4 days after the U.S. and Israel launched strikes, killing Iran's supreme leader and triggering a regional war.
An act of war. This would be an act of war. Any such act against Iran would be regarded as complicity with the aggressors. It would be regarded as an act of war against Iran. Defensive is synonym for offensive. Doesn't make sense. Do they want to deprive Iran of its capability and capacity to fight back against the aggressors? That would be a shame if these countries take sides with the aggressors. They have already done enough against Iran. This would be...
So I'm pretty sure that's a UN microphone I see. We can go back to the prior one. Yeah. Oh, look, there's RT and whatnot. AP, Associated Press, AFP. Yeah, so there's a lot of journalists here. A lot of journalists here. All right. And, oh man, that whole thesis I have about pivoting from Iran after the operation is complete to Russia, every single day I just get little drips of information that confirm my bias. So Trump met with Mers today because Mers traveled to the White House. We have to talk, and then Mers brought this up. We have to talk about Ukraine. Ukraine has to preserve its territory and its security interests. There are too many bad guys in the world.
Talk about Ukraine. There are too many bad guys in this world, actually, and this is an issue we have to talk about because we all want to see this war coming to an end as soon as possible. But Ukraine has to preserve its territory and their security interests, and well, we will talk about that.
Right. We will.
Looking forward to that.
Well,
we have to talk about Ukraine.
Yep. So we already know the position of the Germans, so we don't necessarily need to go too far into that. But they don't want the Russians around in Ukraine. They don't want the Russians to win that. So this is a continuation. This is a separate clip. Trump on Russia and Ukraine. There is a tremendous hatred between Putin and Zelensky.
Between President Putin and there's tremendous hatred between President Putin and President Zelensky. Tremendous hatred. I've seen there's tremendous hatred between President Putin and President Zelensky. Tremendous hatred. I've seen a lot of hatred in my life, but I think this is about top scale. I believe it's going to happen. Sometimes I blame one, sometimes I blame the other. I think it's going to happen, but it's high on my list. Not in that it affects the United States so much because it's very far away.
So that's a quite short clip. But that's just Trump saying, yeah, they hate each other's guts. They hate each other's guts. And then this is Zelensky today. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to send drone defense specialists to protect the Middle Eastern cities if nations there will, in response, afterwards, help it get a ceasefire with Russia. Help Ukraine get a ceasefire with Russia. So this is like the beginning of the pivot. Hey guys, I said this in the other stream. Zelensky, even if the United States is kind of tight-lipped about it, which Trump fairly is, him and Merz are being quite formal about it. They're not going out and saying, "Oh, we're gonna go to the European theater and we're going to strong-arm the Russians." They're saying, "No, we're gonna see what we can diplomatically do," right? And then Zelensky is also here, being fairly diplomatic, asking for a ceasefire. But also say, hey, doing exactly what I said he would do, which was call out very publicly for assistance. Like, hey, guys, when you're done over there, come over here. When you're done with Iran, please come and assist getting the ceasefire or helping in the war with Russia over here, please.
Близький Схід має тісні економічні.
The Middle East has close economic ties, relations with the Russian Federation, and has influence. If they give Russia a signal to ceasefire, for example, for a certain period of time, a month, 2 months, we can then send our specialists to protect the civilian population.
Відправити наших фахівців. Перемовини повинні бути з...
The peace talks should take place between the 5th and the 8th or 9th of this month. In principle, we plan to hold the negotiations in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, and those were almost canceled because of the strikes from Iran. So, 5th through the 9th. So, we're about to get some pretty immediate information here on developments with the negotiations between for a ceasefire or a peace agreement or just a continuation in negotiations. We're going to get an update on negotiations with United States, Russia, and Ukraine here.
This was a proposal from the American side. If, due to events in the Gulf and the war, events will shift the date or shift the city, then we are ready for another city, another country. We are prepared to meet in Switzerland, and we are also prepared to meet in Turkey, as I mentioned today. Turkey and Switzerland were both possible venues, as were the Emirates.
Так само, як і Емірат. Близький Схід має...
Yeah. Okay. So, believe it or not, all those things, that's now it. That's everything. And we can hit refresh here and see if there's any new information. Here are the key takeaways. Strikes by the U.S. And Israel continue for a fourth day, paired by reprisals from Iran. Trump outlined in social media post how the U.S. might try to prevent a full-blown energy crisis by escorting and ensuring tankers and other vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial choke point for supplies. Brent crude paired gains on Trump's remarks, but held near $82 a barrel. The S&P 500 rebounded from a 2.5% loss to close less than 1% lower. So if we go to ES, yeah, see, there's the jump. There's the jump. The U.S. president met with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in the Oval Office, musing that the next group of Iran's leaders might be just, quote, as bad, unquote, as the leadership under Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed over the weekend. Khamenei will be buried Iran's second largest city and home to a major shrine. A final vote on his successor may be postponed until next week, Iranian media reported. we'll see even if that vote occurs, because by then a civilian protest movement, a revolution, might occur to completely remove this government and create a new transitory government. Just completely remove the Islamic Republic. You can't appoint a new successor for the Islamic Republic at this point. There's got to be regime change. There has to be a new government. Especially when you also consider what Mers just pointed out, like, hey, if you just get a new Islamic Republic leader, he might just be as bad. So you have to get rid of the Islamic Republic. Okay. Charts. Finally, charts, right? Now, I did, after looking at that news and getting informed about that news, I went ahead and took another Eurodollar long, because we had this Eurodollar long and we had this NZD USD long. And you know what? Totally acceptable stops. Totally acceptable. Both of them were in the green for actually a good bit. And I am extraordinarily happy with the outcome. Also, I set this trading expectation sometime last night, like when we were down here. I'm like, oh, we might end up way, way down there, because I'm looking at these 1 day ranges. And look at that. There's the low for the month. And it's right there at a peak, and I was expecting it to go lower. Also because it's a peak in the ranges here for the week. So I was expecting a move lower. That's probably the low for the week. I would not be surprised if this is the low for the week here, especially after the announcement that Trump is going to pay for insurance and also provide safe passage for the tankers to go through Iran to keep getting oil out of Iran. Now, again, if the oil infrastructure of Iran is critically damaged, this is going to completely circumvent those announcements that have caused this nice bounce. But we'll have to see. If the United States continues the bombing campaign, I was just editing the video from Friday, which was 12 hours before the attack from the United States and Israel on Iran. And I said in my very first video covering this whole spiel that it's probably going to be 3 weeks of bombing. And I'm actually still on top of that. Still, I think it's going to be 3 weeks of bombing. It's going to be totally crushing to get rid. We have to be totally crushing and get rid of all of the capability, all the missile capabilities, because if those missiles get launched from the Iranian side, from the Islamic Republic side, because they see, oh, we're gonna lose the Islamic Republic, we're gonna lose our economic hold on things, and they're like, well, if we can't have the major assets of this economy, then nobody can. And just like when they were attacked, how they attacked everyone else in the Middle East, they'll start attacking their own oil refineries and their own oil infrastructure, their own oil pumps, the ports. It's important to destroy the missiles so that then that is not an option. Just like with the Taiwanese and China, how they have rumored, right, explosives set to blow up all of their semiconductor facilities if China were to come in. It's kind of the same deal with the Iranians. If the US and Israel go in, and now that they have, I bet that they did have a contingent to launch missiles and blow up oil infrastructure, so that then even if the United States won and Israel won and there was a regime change and a transitory government, it would take forever for the oil market to come back online, and oil would be perpetually higher, and it would have these huge negative ramifications, especially for China economically. And then there'd be huge pressure on places like Venezuela to get the fuck online, right? Huge pressure would be put onto Venezuela to try and pump as much oil out. And then it's kind of hard to say how quickly the rest of the Middle East will increase their oil production too. I mean, if oil production goes high enough, right, a lot of options become viable. So we just have to make sure that Iranian's oil facilities do not implode, so that then the Chinese don't have to freak the hell out, right? Dollar paused today. Really, it hit a limit. Hopefully it holds. Not sure if you follow TPOs, but that top on dollar is a multi-month balance high. I remember, I think TPO is a volume profile indicator component, right? TPO is like, I know there's a point of control, there's POC. I'm familiar with POC. But if we go to DXY, yeah, that's probably, I would not be surprised if this is it. Now, that is contingent. And by this is it, I mean, a dollar starts reversing back and oil starts reversing back and things go back to being risk on, contingent on the Iranian oil capabilities not being damaged. I said that in the very first stream. I've said it in pretty much every single stream covering the Iranian situation here. So all those oil capabilities are not hurt, damaged, and have to be repaired with insane engineering. As the Iranian government is going through a regime change, potentially, my big concern is civil war, then things should be hunky-dory. Everything should be fine. Now, there is one more X post that I have, and it's a post from myself. But this is my stream, so I'm going to share it. This is a long one. But I was very quickly justified in these posts. So give me just a moment. I want to go through this because I feel very strongly about what's in here. It's disappointing to see people think, well, Trump went into Iran because Israel forced U.S. intervention, unquote, when there had been a military buildup for over a month and negotiations with Iran had just ended poorly. Remember, the buildup started after the massacres in January, the student massacres, the tens of thousands, and Trump's warnings in January in response to those. Just because we hear Gang of 8 officials, and Gang of 8 is the individuals who are getting intelligence from the White House by law, which are the party leaders and the Senate Committee and the House Committee on Intelligence chairs in the United States, say Israel was going to enter with or without us to bomb the meeting that Khomeini and other leaders were at on February 28th. And we decided to go in with them on the preemptive strike. That sentence does not equate to we only attacked Iran because Israel told us that they were going to attack anyways, irrespective of any intelligence information or context. Now, because everything up to that point clearly telegraphed that the U.S. was going to go in vis-a-vis all of the military buildup for the month up until that point, unless you actually believed for a second that after the initial leak and official report of the U.S. demands when negotiating with Iran, remember that picture of Jared Kushner and Witkoff with the Iranian officials sitting there? And they were like, yes, just no nukes. Just say no nukes. And they're like, well, what about this? Like, no, just say no nukes. Well, what about this? No, just say no nukes. Okay, well, maybe we can come to a negotiation tomorrow. And then that made everyone very angry on the U.S. side. So after the initial leak and official reports of the U.S. demands when negotiating with Iran and how that fell through in that style, that the Islamic Republic would ever agree to effectively surrender without a shot fired. It's irrational. They were not. They're extremists. They're religious extremists. They essentially want to remember their religion is they want to take over the world for their God. They want to be a form of judgment day for the entire world. Now, with all the rockets and bombs launched from Iran to almost every other Middle Eastern country, a super majority of them want the Islamic Republic gone after all those attacks. It's not just Europe and the United States and Israel and Australia. It's not just those guys anymore. And arguably China now. China probably really fucking hates Iran's guts right now for getting China into this huge economic mess. I'd imagine many countries in that camp just want the Strait of Hormuz to be safe so they don't end up with economic issues. Especially China, just as they are setting up economic expectations for their 15th five-year plan. And they're going to say, hey, we want to hit 5% GDP again. But saying that in the current environment now after everything that's happened with Iran is a lot harder to say with absolute certainty or really high confidence in China to Xi Jinping. Everyone proposing this 5-year plan, they have to propose it to Xi. And now they have to add all these little asterisks and caveats like, oh, so long shit gets fixed with the Strait of Hormuz, that's the asterisk. That's the little condition we have. So the same conditions we have for setting our trading expectations here on seeing more risk on price movement are the same expectations and demands that the Chinese have to hit their economic goals at the moment. With much more support now for this regime change in Iran, it would not be hard to expect that the process of creating a transitory government is not started this year. It'd be very, very hard to expect that doesn't happen. Transitory government this year, I'd expect that process to start. Which is what the protests back in January were about. The protests were about regime change. That's why they were getting shut. They were saying, liberate, become a more liberal government, become a more secular government. They wanted the government to change, and they were killed for that. Now, my major concern about the transitional government is about violence and terrorism from those grieving and mad about the Ayatollah's assassination, those aligned still with the Islamic Republic. I think their primary targets are going to actually be the Iranians on the side of whatever transitory government comes next. A quote-unquote civil war on some scale, large or small, is still up in the air right now, whether or not it's a handful of attacks or it's an all-out call from the people loyal in the IRGC to the Islamic Republic to create an organized campaign against any kind of transitory government. Now, as the new government is created is what I expect. So I expect there to be some internal fighting, some civil war of some size. We don't know if it's going to be large or small. We're going to have to see how the U.S. bombing campaign goes. And again, the idea of boots on the ground is still an option. It's not off the table right now. Trump has not said that they are not going to not put boots on the ground. However, if I could add to this, when it comes to boots on the ground, my expectation is that Trump will not go in alone. He's going to try and do the same thing that actually happened after 9/11. He is going to rally NATO, the United Nations. He's going to rally Europe. He's going to rally the Middle East and say, listen, let's all chip in. Everyone sends military units on the ground. So it's not just the United States. Everyone goes. Everyone goes, and we establish peace in Iran and a transitory government. And we all go as a force for peace. And he could also say, let's get everyone on the board of peace to contribute troops to boots on the ground. So it's not just the United States, it's everyone contributing in the world who wants to see, who agrees with a new transitory government, a regime change in Iran, to protect it against people still in alignment with the Islamic Republic, and also to protect it from the war in Pakistan and Afghanistan that's going on right now. So that would be my next best guess, or at least my wish list, for if there is a boots on the ground scenario, the kind of organization and the kind of operation that occurs in that scenario. Okay. Now, the secondary targets, those were the primary targets, is the Islamic Republic hitting people who are on the side of a future transitory government. The secondary targets are all the Western countries who had open border policies for more than a decade and are likely to have Islamic Republic cells in their country because of it. And we just saw, from the United States side at least, that the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, wants to start funding DHS again, and he's making posts about how the Democrats are already trying to make moves in the U.S. Congress to prevent that, to obstruct paying and refunding the Department of Homeland Security to go after any leads of Islamic Republic cells in the United States. And it's actually rumored also in some European countries that some of the muted response to not immediately or fervently support Trump, not necessarily it was because of international law. They use that as the Machiavellian political guard excuse, but that they're actually afraid that if they immediately came out in support, the rumor is that any Islamic Republic officials who did come in through their open border policies would also commit acts of violence, to say the least. So there's concerns there, even more so now on the immigration front. So the immigration story across Europe and Western countries and the United States is going to definitely flare up again if those attacks come through. And there was one attack, and a guy had a shirt on saying something about Allah controlling him, and then under that shirt was an Islamic Republic flag. Look, that shooting was terrible, but I'm an arguably terrorist attack. But so far, it's only been one. And if it's only one, then the idea that there are all these Islamic Republic cells in all these Western countries that are going to start conducting all these attacks on people starts getting a bit blown out of proportion, right? So we'll have to actually see if that risk gets realized or not, and whether or not these governments are going to increase efforts, you could say, intelligence efforts into making sure those attacks do not happen. Now, finally, again, if your complaint is about international law being broken, then be ready to get involved with arguments from international law attorneys defending actions against the Islamic Republic. There are more options than just those from, more opinions, rather. There are more opinions than just those from Islamic Republic diplomats in Western countries and at the UN. Those Islamic Republic diplomats speaking at the UN and the diplomats in the Western countries. Alongside the chants and claims from a lot of far-left pundits, and protesters in Western countries as well. Again, considering the U.S. CENTCOM buildup started after the massacre in January, you have to marginalize that event by arguing it was not a good justification for the initial process of this whole military buildup that led to this enablement of all the following events in the first place, that led to the breaking of all these international laws. The quote-unquote breaking of these international laws. Again, we'll see how that develops. So here's this part here. Not much later, Trump responds to the question about Israel forcing the U.S. into an attack on the Islamic Republic.
Did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people, people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready and we were ready, and we've had a very, very powerful impact.
And that was my expectation and what I said at the very start up here. Sentence, that paragraph. And then on the international law front,
it has, Nigel, this is embarrassing. It is pathetic weakness by Keir Starmer. It has nothing to do with international law. He is actually causing more damage by citing international law to the concept of international law than anyone else.
He quotes it on everything.
He quotes it on everything. But look, Australia and Canada operate supposedly under the same international law. For that matter, so do the Americans. They have clearly found that it is within international law. Saudi Arabia is supporting America on this. Britain is standing alone while Arab countries have supported America from the get-go.
There's a very big coalition that's formed around America.
And from the get-go, not just since the attacks on the Gulf states. It's pathetic weakness, it's embarrassing. Ever since Ronald Reagan hit Libya in 1986, after Gaddafi blew up, his terrorists blew up a disco, killing 2 American service personnel and injuring 100 others. And Margaret Thatcher supported the US Air Force leaving from an RAF base in England. Other countries in Europe wouldn't allow it. We have always had a relationship with the United States where we've allowed our interests to be defended. You don't have to wait. A police officer, an armed police officer on the streets of London, does not have to wait until someone shoots him to shoot back.
How damaged is the relationship?
The relationship is damaged, seriously damaged, because American lives are put at risk by the fact that they have to fly far greater distances from Missouri than they would do from Diego Garcia.
Yeah, instead of it being like, I think, a 10-hour flight, it became a over 30-hour flight for the B-2 bombers to get to the stealth bombers to get to Iran.
We've allowed the use of that base before. I mean, the special relationship is in tatters here, thanks to Starmer's weak leadership. And by the way, it has absolutely nothing to do with international law, in my opinion. It's to do with his votes. It's to do with his concerns.
All right, now it's going to devolve into more politics on the UK side of things. All right. Boy, oh boy, we got into a lot more politics over the hour. We didn't get too much into the charts, right? But it's pretty easy to say, okay, all these charts, we're probably going higher from here. So long we don't have those hits, so long we don't have damage to the capabilities of Iranian oil production, and we keep bombing the hell out of the Islamic Republic and we get them out. We just get rid of them. And there's a proper transitory government in place. Well, it seems rational to me to expect things to do well going forward for all these assets. Now, we can go down this list here. S&P, look at that. NASDAQ, also a nice jump here. We can even do this. Nice jump on the reaction here. This is the Dow, nice jump. The Nikkei, nice jump. The UK's stock market. The EU's stock market. The French stock market. The German stock market. Now here's the Nikkei, here's the topics. Here's New Zealand's market, which hasn't done so well. I don't think that's enough data here. I don't think this market's actually open. I know it is open, and actually it is going up. It is going up. It gapped down, though. And Australia's stock market also has been doing well. And then we can look at the currencies. All rally against the dollar, rally against the dollar, rally against the dollar, rally against the dollar, rally against... Well, this is Aussie, New Zealand. This is Australia doing better against the New Zealand. This is Euro doing better against the CAD. So this is the Swiss franc. This is the dollar getting weaker against the Swiss franc. This is the yuan. This is the yuan getting stronger against the dollar here. And then we have DXY. DXY is getting weaker. And then all the yen pairs are recuperating. And then dollar yen is going, it's quite choppy. It seems like it's at least a bit lower than it was, but that is super choppy over the last few hours here for sure. And then we can go and check out crypto, and even crypto had a nice positive response out of it. Look at Bitcoin, look at Ethereum, look at Solana. Solana's actually still doing pretty good. ADA, that's so much ADA. Litecoin actually had a nice bump. And we can check out the commodities. We can look at gold. And what was my expectation? And I watched the videos. Because I'm editing them, right? I said, on the announcement of a strike, gold will go up, oil will go up, and then, so long the operation goes as expected, you will see the follow-through, some dollar strengthening afterwards, some sell-offness, right? At least dollar strengthening relative to these things. Now, oh, look at that. You actually have a big fat bottom wick there. Bum, ba, da, bum. Up 4% from that low. So let's see if oil continues to move higher. Really what's going to make the difference is if we actually start to see materially more ships going through the Strait of Hormuz safely. See, it's probably going to take until maybe the middle of next week, end of next week, for the first few ships that take the US's offer of we'll pay for your insurance and we'll protect you, just keep bringing oil effectively to China. All those ships going in and out, the first few ships are going to be taking the biggest risk. And once those ships come out over the weekend, there's going to be much more discussions at the shipping companies of, oh, okay, the first few ships have gone in, nothing has happened, more ships are planning to go in. Okay, we can do this. Let's go in too. So not this week. My expectation is next week, the following week, we start to see the number of ships going through the Strait of Hormuz again actually pick up. So with that in mind, we'll probably stay in the high 70s is my expectation here on oil. High 70s. And then if there's more attacks on oil capabilities, we'll go into the 80s, right? But assuming there's no attacks and assuming that ships are able to get through safely and they slowly start to add ships to the lanes to get the oil out of Iran, well, then guess what? You're going to see more ships offer to do the same thing, to take the United States deal and go through those shipping lanes and get that oil out of Iran. And who knows? The sanctions on that oil might change in literally the next week in order to help even to assist and make even more ships available at those ports. A lot more oil could get potentially pulled out of Iran. So we'll see. We'll see. Things can definitely change dramatically here in a week, and oil potentially could be in the low 70s, high 60s sometime next week. Not this week, next week. If what I just said actually even comes to fruition at all. And that's WTI. Let's see here. We have nat gas. And nat gas came down on the news. And it's actually come down a lot more strong. Because unlike with oil that's had this rebound here, nat gas has not had that same rebound. And a couple of moves on, wow, pound yields. Wow. Look at that. 10-year on the Great British Pound. Whoa. It's been an interesting time to trade bonds. That's for certain shit. 10-year yield. Yeah, all these yields going higher. All these yields going higher on the expectation of higher economic risk, right? Of higher inflation due to oil not coming out of Iran, increasing energy prices globally, and then those transferring down the road into consumer inflation going higher. But hopefully that can be prevented, and then these yields will continue going lower. All right. I don't think I've missed anything. I've gone through quite a lot of these charts. NVIDIA seems to be doing A-okay. It's still kind of stuck in this range here. What about Exxon? EXX. Yeah. And Exxon had a bit of a gap up and then a bit of a sell-off. But Exxon's probably going to continue doing quite well. Exxon has quite a few things up its sleeve. They actually have a Supreme Court case going on right now that they're trying to resolve with Cuba. The Cubans confiscated a shitload of ExxonMobil's oil when Fidel Castro came to power. And now the people at Exxon are looking at companies that are operating in Cuba. And they're saying, hey, the United States, those companies, they're operating not just in Cuba, but also in the United States. And they are either involved somehow with the oil that was confiscated from us all those years ago. And we want to be confiscated by those companies. So we'll see how those lawsuits end up. And from what I read, it's at least 700 million to over $1 billion, depending on who you read and what the context is, in funds that Exxon is trying to get back. And if there is an invasion into Cuba, you have Bay of Pigs 2.0, Electric Boogaloo, that's actually a success. Or you have, after the show of force of Iran, the leaders in Cuba come to an agreement. There also was this thing where all these people in Miami, a bunch of Cuban exiles got together and signed a document saying we are ready essentially to become the next transitional government for Cuba. I don't know how the United States is responding to that particular group, but I am watching developments for what's going to happen next with Cuba as closely as I can. We have to stay on top of future expectations. And if the United States is able to get regime change also in Cuba, Exxon is going to likely get that confiscated oil back. They're going to be reimbursed that money very, very likely. So I would expect Exxon to have a nice little positive surprise down the road if that ends up being another either successful U.S. operation or a successful U.S. negotiation. Either way, Exxon has, after Exxon getting back stuff from Venezuela and getting the deals in Venezuela, now they're potentially getting their stuff from Cuba. Exxon's kind of on a roll with the geopolitical implications from the Trump administration. Okay. I am ready, set to end the stream. I'll say thank you guys very much for watching. I think there's going to be news tomorrow, so I might as well just be on tomorrow. these are turning into daily streams all of a sudden. I'm like, I don't want to necessarily do daily streams because there's not always stuff to talk about. Well, right now there's stuff to talk about. So I'll probably see you guys tomorrow. Very, very likely see you guys also tomorrow. And of course, I'll be in the Plan the Profit Discord. If you want to get into this Discord, all you have to do is get into the WAP. So you go to the WAP link in the description, you click on that, you click on join free Discord, and that will take you here. And also, it's so nice having people go through WAP because it prevents so many bots. There are still bots, but oh my god, I used to have to ban bots like every other day. Now it's like a once a month thing. I have to ban some bot from impersonating me on my Discord. So very happy with how things are going. And also there's a new research thread I started. It's a research thread for, if I actually go here, general chat, geopolitical and economic X lists. So I've been building some public lists on X to cover geopolitics from different countries. And I have one list listed here for open source intelligence. So if you guys would like to see how I go through stuff on X and how I categorize, and if I need to do research, let's say on Spain or on Germany or on France, if I need political analysis on a particular country, I am putting analysts and people who are really big name reporters and really big name politicians into their respective geopolitical lists. And I'd like to develop this with you guys too. So if you guys would like to help me develop these lists, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep developing these lists on my own and I'll share them as they come out. But if you want to use these lists, they'll be here and this would be updated over time as I change it and update it. And yeah, you can also comment in there. You have recommendations of people you want to add, different lists, whatnot. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Boss, Joe Boss, and I will